Americans will soon find out whether or not the Senate will be able to pass a $15 an hour federal minimum wage hike through a simple majority. Now, that process, as we've talked about on this show before, is known as reconciliation. Typically, Senate bills need to pass with 60 votes. That's known as the legislative filibuster. But if it's legislation that has a significant impact on the federal budget, well, it could count as something that could pass through a simple majority under a process known as reconciliation. Now, hiking the minimum wage to $15 an hour is on the docket, in addition to pension issues and subsidies meant to help laid off workers remain on their health insurance plans. But don't be fooled by the wording in that graphic, because the health insurance plan that they're referring to is COBRA, which is a pathetic waste of money and an awful way of getting people coverage during a pandemic. You could just expand Medicare and offer it to everyone who's lost their health insurance, but that's not what this story is about. Let's go back to the minimum wage question, because Republicans are arguing that increasing the federal minimum wage doesn't pass muster with the budget restrictions guiding passage of Biden's pandemic plan. But Democrats are confident that they have a strong case fueled by recent analysis from the Congressional Budget Office. That was analysis that we also shared with you guys that showed that increasing the federal minimum wage would actually have an impact on the federal budget, because it would mean that more people are making more money and they're paying more into tax revenue. It's also very likely under this analysis that people wouldn't be as reliant on the social safety net. So it would help, free up some federal money that's currently being used on these social safety net programs. Now, Senator Bernie Sanders has been on the front end or the front lines fighting in favor of increasing the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. He told Politico, quote, "We've got tens of millions of workers working for starvation wages. It's an absolute national disgrace. $15 an hour is not a radical idea. A number of states have moved in that direction. Over 60% of the American people think that's where we should go, and that's what I want to do." By the way, one of those states was Florida, which just passed a $15 an hour minimum wage in their state through a ballot initiative. And then one little bit of information about Bernie Sanders and how he's been kind of massaging this situation, because it gives you a sense of how much he's willing to fight for this. Sanders vowed to move on it as soon as possible and shut down the notion that Congress needs to space out legislation passed via reconciliation. He said, quote, "We don't have to wait a few more months, right?" The senator said, gesturing to an aide he referenced as Mr. Reconciliation. And at that point, the aide answered, quote, "We can go as quickly as possible." So that's what Bernie Sanders would like to do. But I do want to hear your thoughts, Nando, because there's all this debate about what the parliamentarian is going to decide, and is this going to pass muster under the Byrd rule? What do you think?
Well, I mean, like you mentioned, that it all comes down to this the Senate parliamentarian who no one's ever heard of, and it just goes to show just how bizarre and weird the Senate is as a legislative body. I mean, it's unlike any other legislature in the world in terms of its just kind of very arcane rules and provisions as to how it has to operate. One of these things is like what you mentioned, this whole. The fact that there is a Senate parliamentarian who decides whether these things can go in the reconciliation or not. The Democrats don't have to listen to the Senate parliamentarian. That's the crazy thing about this. It's like, it's not like a law. It's not like a law, like the Byrd rule is not law. It's just custom that the Senate has decided it's gonna do, but it's not, it could change it if they wanted to. It's all so weird. Like our system runs on the weirdest, kind of most bizarre and arcane institutions and cultural norms that frankly 99.9 repeating of the American population are totally alienated from. Like it's just, I find it so wild that the $15 minimum wage, which would provide a dramatic transformation in the lives of millions of Americans, is gonna come down to whether a Senate parliamentarian, basically like, some nerd who's read all the books about, the histories of millions and thousands of decisions that the Senate has passed in the last 200 years. is going to decide the fate of possibly millions and millions of Americans. It just speaks to like the absurdity of our system in so many ways.
Well, you just touched on something so important, and it's the fact that Democrats could literally just not listen to her.
Yeah,
right?
No, okay.
They could literally just say like, yeah, we're gonna overrule your decision here, and we're gonna go ahead and try to pass this through reconciliation anyway. And they could do that. But the fact of the matter is, and this is something that everyone should be well aware of, the person who's against the Democrats overruling the Senate parliamentarian, a woman by the name of Elizabeth McDonough, who is not in any way democratically elected, Biden's against it. Biden's against overruling her. Yeah. So I don't know how much of an impact that's going to have, but look, right now is pretty much the only opportunity that Senator Sanders has to. He's got power. He's got the ability to do what he's always wanted to do. And he's got to fight like hell to make it happen. And the thing that worries me is that he does actually have a friendly relationship with Joe Biden. And based on some of his more recent comments, he seems to be under the impression that Joe Biden actually wants to pass a $15 an hour minimum wage. But I don't think he does. I really don't think he does, because he included it in his $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief bill. But then he has this meeting with all these business leaders. He gets this letter from the US Chamber of Commerce urging him to make the relief package more targeted, to avoid increasing the federal minimum wage at all. And then he starts wavering immediately. And then he starts like goofing around with the notion of passing a standalone bill to increase the federal minimum wage. We all know that's not gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen. A lot of the political capital is gonna be focused on getting this economic relief bill passed. And the $15 an hour minimum wage needs to be part of that relief bill.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not going to pass as a standalone bill because it would have to pass with 60 votes unless the Democrats decided to nuke the filibuster, which they could if they wanted to. But Joe Biden is an institutionalist, and especially he's a Senate institutionalist. I mean, he's been in the Senate for forever. He got into the Senate when he was 29 years old. He was one of the youngest senators ever. He spent his entire life basically in the Senate. So he like loves these stupid rules. He like loves that he knows who Senator Robert Byrd was, and he like had a relationship with him, and now he has the Byrd rule, and now like he's not gonna break it because he knew who he was, and he probably like knows his family and children, and like that's like important to him. I understand, like, I mean, Bernie, like in the process of the reconciliation bill, like what he just needs. Because again, it's because it's the COVID pandemic. He knows that he's probably going to get the votes, So if they can squeeze it in, and the administration doesn't oppose it too strenuously, like if he did something super aggressively to alienate Joe Biden, and maybe, he knows that he has all the leverage right now because of COVID. COVID is the thing. It's what you can attach all these things to. Everybody knows that, and certainly every Democrat wants to pass, the billions of dollars for the vaccine rollout and all that stuff. And Biden knows that his administration basically depends on how it can emerge out of this COVID thing. So now is when he has all the leverage. I think as long as he can guarantee not vocal opposition from anyone, they can probably sneak this through. But it's gonna, I mean, I don't see the Democrats overruling the Senate parliamentarian though. Like that's just not gonna happen.
No, I don't see that.
Too many will jump ship if they did that, because people these senators are obsessed with the Senate. That's what it's like. That's the weird thing about it. It's like they're obsessed with the Senate as an institution, even though it is one of the most rotten, bizarre, and undemocratic aspects of our entire government. That they love being in the Senate. They love hanging out in the Senate cloakroom and doing their deals and things like that, and being totally disconnected from the American people. I mean, they just love it, and yeah. So I don't see them overruling the parliamentarian if the parliamentarian decides that they cannot include the $15 minimum wage in it.
I don't know. I think that senators need to get out of the Senate coke room and get off the drugs and realize that 60% of Americans absolutely want a $15 an hour minimum, federal minimum.
Not coke room.
I know. Oh. Play on words, Nando. Play along. What's wrong with you?
I love the idea of like Mitch McConnell being like, I'm just gonna do a quick bump right here if you don't mind before we get back to the voting. I'll do a quick bump.
Oh my God.
Are we allowed to talk about that on TYT? I don't know.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.